Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. On behalf of the McCormick School of Engineering, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our conversation today. My name is Julio Tino. I'm the Dean of the School. So I want to thank the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering for putting together today's panel, the latest in a number of different programs we have held at our school, and like nearly all in the country, continue to reflect and try to be agents of positive change. Today, our guests, some of the most prominent Black engineers in the nation, will provide perspectives on how we can support and expand diversity, equity, and inclusion in engineering and technology in general. And I'm so glad that they can join us today. Now, let me introduce Russ Joseph, Associate Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering, as well as Computer Science, and a member of the ECE Faculty Diversity Committee. Russ will serve as our moderator and introduce the panelists. Russ, the screen is yours. And thank you all for attending.
All right. Thank you, Julio. I'm Russ Joseph, and on behalf of the ECE Faculty Diversity Committee, it is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished panelists. First, I want to introduce Ayanna Howard. Ayanna is an accomplished educator, researcher, innovator, and roboticist. She's the first woman to serve as the Dean of Engineering at The Ohio State University. Welcome, Ayanna.
Thank you, thank you.
Next, I want to welcome Timothy Pinkston. Timothy is a prolific computer engineer, researcher, educator, and administrator. He's currently Vice Dean of Faculty Affairs at the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you, Russell. Good to be here and good to join this distinguished panel and to see my good friend and former colleague, Ayanna Howard, who is a proud graduate of USC. And I'm a proud graduate of The Ohio State University, by the way.
All right, great to have you all. And finally, I want to introduce James West. Jim is a research professor of electrical and computer engineering and mechanical engineering at Johns Hopkins University. Prior to that, he was a fellow at Bell Labs. He's known worldwide as the co-inventor of the ubiquitous four-electret microphone and as a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward.
Yes, I think without further ado, let's just jump right into today's conversation. I want to let the audience know that we'll be taking Q&A at the end of today's discussion. So please go right ahead and post your questions throughout the event using the Q&A function available on Zoom. All right, so without further ado, let's just jump right into the panel discussion. At the moment, we're sneaking up on the 1-year anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. In the past year, our society has been forced to revisit the roles that race plays in shaping experience and opportunity. How have recent events reframed the conversation around race?
So I'll jump in. This is Ayanna. And so one of the things is that, being Black female in tech, I remember last summer, watching the things unfold and being like, oh, but we've been here before, right? Like we've been here before and before and before and before. But I will say that this time it was different. I will say that this has been a positive change. And the way that it's impacted engineering is, I think this is the first time that we have used words such as, inequities, racial inequities in engineering. Whereas before, as a Black engineer, we knew it existed, but this is the first time others are also using that language. And I'm starting to see institutional changes around these issues that have been identified both by students, public, as well as faculty, but changes that I think will stick this time. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I might add to that introduction, and thank you very much for that. There are some very subtle changes that are happening that I consider very positive. For example, I talked to roughly 200 high school students a few days ago, and the major question from the students was how racism affected my career in technology. They were very curious about this, and I was very careful to point out that technology is a little bit different than other areas, and it is because we're basically depend on peer review for advancement. And this is somewhat colorblind. It's not totally colorblind, but it is more, how shall I say, more fair than other techniques for evaluating the progress of people.
I agree with what my fellow panelists have just said. Russ, you hearken back to the fact that we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And I think what makes it different this time is we all saw with our own 2 eyes and with our own ears a horrible injustice that occurred to someone for no explainable reason for over 9 minutes. And it was an affront on everyone's values. And so while there could have been injustices that have been and have been injustices that have been afflicted onto segments, various segments of our society, and perhaps hasn't been in the forefront and actually visible for everyone to see. What happened this last time was just so egregious that I think it caused a disruption to the way that let's say biases, explicit and implicit, have been let's say tolerated or ignored or overlooked, or let's say accepted or excused. And so since I think as a result of that, you saw people from around the world, but also here in the States from various segments of our society saying, we really need to pay attention to this matter. And of course that brings up whether that the notion and I believe the fact that there has been injustices not only in society at large, but structural and systemic kinds of problems in this domain, that not only with regards to racial and ethnic populations, but other populations as well, which has caused all of us to step back and say, we really do need to, this is a call to action, and there is a movement affront here to act. And so I think that's the difference here.
Yeah, I think I agree. Things definitely do appear to be different. I like you, I was horrified seeing the video and hearing, as I'm sure everyone was. But as we've noted, this is not the first time something like this has happened, right? So I can think back to a few summers prior to that, when it seemed like every other day some Black person was dying under police custody for no reason. But as you all noted, this feels different for some reason. Are there, so what sort of broader lessons should we be taking by the sort of the way that people reacted, and sort of the the changes that we're beginning to see made, or the general kind of awakenings, or
Yeah, so let me jump in and sort of take what I was saying at the end there and expand on it. This notion of a movement, and we've been seeing actions, throughout, the past decades, and even beyond, where people within our own community, the engineering, STEM community, computing community, have, the National Academies of Engineering, other, the ASEE, the American Society of Engineering Education, with the Dean's Diversity Pledge. There have been movement, there have been actions taken. But what I think the tipping point, perhaps the straw that broke the camel's back, with last year, and the slew of things that, with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and several others in succession, it just, I think, caused not only the broader society, but us within the engineering technical community to say, okay, there's something we must do, because we know the numbers, we see the lack of representation of certain racial and ethnic groups, and even women within our field. So we are we have something that we have a way that we can improve within our own community, our own technical community. And so that's, I think, caused more actions, such as persons from the marginalized and minoritized and vulnerable community, that is, say, Blacks in STEM, Black in engineering, Black in robotics. A number of groups have been, from the vulnerable groups have been formed to, take action and to have a call for action within our professional societies, ACM, IEEE, and other societies, BMES. And so there's been this movement to, let's say, a solidarity by some of those professional organizations, by our universities, by our schools of engineering, and groups within, to try to have some specific actions, as you are doing right now, Russ, and I applaud you for, in the dean and there in Northwestern, and your colleagues are saying, what can we do? We must do something. We cannot allow this to continue. There's some actions that we can take, and so I applaud this action here that's being taken, and we'll talk more about some specific things that we can do as a community.
I might also add that one of the most disturbing factors for me is that over the past 15, 20 years, the percentage of underrepresented minorities in STEM has been constant, or somewhere around the 6% level. And this is not to say that our numbers have not grown. It's just that we're just barely keeping up with the expansion of the fields of technology. And in order to fix this, we have to start much earlier in the educational system. We must start in middle school to build a pipeline that will eventually allow us to grow beyond the 5 to 6% that we represent of representation in STEM.
Yeah, those are great points. So to kind of, I want to come back to the education ways that we can kind of expand in a second. But if we want to kind of maintain this sort of kind of push, this kind of change that we've been seeing, which was caused by this shock, it seems that we need to kind of have we need to have our institutions really value diversity, equity, and inclusion to kind of maintain sort of this kind of what will be a prolonged effort, right? This is not something, we're not going to fix everything overnight. So are there ways that we can kind of make sure that everyone buys in, or ways to motivate why we need to have continued push towards diversity, equity, and inclusion? What should we, what message should we, what's a message that we should be selling or conveying to our institutions that this is something that is desperately needed?
So I think, one of the things, and this is from the point of view of engineering, is, I believe engineers change the world. Like, we create the world around us. Without engineers, we would be back in, 1,000 years ago. But I also know, and this is what we have to do better as engineers, is to say, technology is not value neutral. It is not colorblind, right? Like, I think a lot of times we fooled ourselves in the past that says, well, no, it's engineering, like it's numbers, it's data, like it can't, there's no race in this. And I think we as a community need to be a lot more vocal to say, actually, technology is not value neutral. There is racial and gender differences, even in how we choose the parameters to design our technology or build it up and things like that. And I think when the rest of the world sees engineers who typically have not leaned into these social causes, right? Like, it's not in our training. It's like, why should we? I like playing in the sandbox much better than talking about, race and equity for like social values. But I think when we take this on, it actually sets a standard to the rest of the world that says, look, if those folks who, clearly don't have the training are actually stepping up to the plate and saying, look, we need to lean into this, we need to address this, we need to really look at ourselves, I think we also set a standard for the rest to say, wait, hold it. This is really what we were supposed to be doing. The engineers are now doing it. And I believe as engineers, once we touch something, we fix problems. I also think that it moves the rest of the world as well, at the institution level as well.
I've been saying this for the past several months and even years before, but it's worth repeating. It is the job of academia not only to discover and disseminate new knowledge, but also, and most importantly, to train and develop the next generations of the workforce. That's what we do, right? And the lack of diversity, of a diverse workforce, sets us as a nation, as a society, behind in being able to approach problems from a wide-ranging and useful perspective, or perspectives. We need to dispel the false narrative, which also oftentimes pervades academia and other areas, which is that excellence is somehow compromised by diversity. When in reality, it's just the opposite. Excellence is enhanced by diversity. Without the engagement of a diverse thinking, with diverse thinking and perspectives brought to bear on addressing challenging engineering and computing problems, for instance, that broadly affect and are pervasive to many segments of our society, how can the best and most creative solutions be discovered and applied for the benefit of all humanity? Likewise, if segments of our society's population are not equitably included and engaged in opportunities and access for making and benefiting from technological contributions, how can our society, again, as a whole, make significant progress toward reaching its full potential? These are the kinds of questions and responses to them that we need to address as a community, as an academic community. These kinds of questions speak to the importance of valuing diversity, equity, inclusion in our engineering and computing fields. They also speak to the important role that each of us, both individually and collectively, as a community, as academe, speak to how it's all of our problems, it's all of our issues, it's all of our things to address. It's not just those who are marginalized or minoritized or the vulnerable populations to address. It's all of our issue, all of us should be champions and allies of this to advance, further advance diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Excellent point. Some years ago, I had, at the invitation of the Minister of Technology of the city of Shenzhen in China, and in that conversation that I had with him, he related an experience that he had standing on the street corner in Silicon Valley. And he says, there I saw the world go by. And what lesson did that teach him? That diversity in the STEM workforce was very important. And here we sit, the most diverse nation in the world. And we should be leading in all areas of technology by putting this diverse workforce together and making it work for this country. And this is one of the sad stories about this country, in that we do not take advantage of the natural talent that we have.
So how should we kind of measure progress? How do we know that we're headed in the right direction, moving towards a more diverse engineering discipline? Like how do we know that we're moving in the right direction? What are the signs that we should be looking for?
I think we'll know when the leadership of the institutions take a bold step forward and endorse these changes. This certainly happened here at my university, and it changed the temperature with respect to even the ability to talk about the problems. You see, we don't discuss those problems very, very often among ourselves. And this is one of the things that I very definitely noted that changed in here at Johns Hopkins, when the president of the university declared diversity one of his pet projects.
While I would support my esteemed colleague, Professor West's viewpoint there, I would like to, if not provide a different point of view, which is we will know that there's progress when it's not just the leaders and persons in authority that are saying that there's a problem, that there's an issue that we should be addressing, but when the masses, when the faculty, when the faculty, staff, and students, when it's coming boiling up, and when there's ownership by the faculty who are the gatekeepers, when there's ally and championing and advocacy by the people, the masses themselves, then we'll see that there's actual change has occurred, because it's everyone's issue. It's everyone's is valuing and demonstrating their valuing of diversity, equity, inclusion, and taking actions themselves. It's not someone else's problem. It's not the university or the president or some aloof, distant entity that is supposed to solve this issue. It's everybody taking on some aspect within their own spheres of influence, within their own abilities, within their own things that they touch and do and see. That's when we see that there's real progress, I think.
I think we're in complete agreement, because if you, and what I intended to say, if it was not clear, is that the result of the leader of the university taking a strong stance, this resulted in discussing the problem at the local level within the department, which was never done before. In the 20 years I've been here at Hopkins, only after that stance by the president did this become a general topic of discussion during departmental meetings.
So just to add on to both of what my colleagues have stated, I also think that the way we will know that it's done is when we stop talking about it as, this is part of my value to this is a competency of engineering, right? Where it's not like this is what I believe in as a value, but it's like, no, if you don't do this, you're not competent as an engineer. And when we've moved the needle to that, I think we would have really started to democratize this a lot better.
Those are all great. Those are all great. I want to take a second and kind of go back to what Jim mentioned a while back about, we need to kind of start earlier and kind of go after and attract some of these young minds towards STEM fields kind of early on. And so I'd like to ask our esteemed panel, what should we be doing to attract young students towards STEM careers? And then as a follow-up, much has been made about leaky pipelines in STEM education. What can we do to make sure that we don't lose these students once we've got them kind of hooked?
I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So if you'd asked me, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, I would have talked about pipeline, and then maybe 2 years ago, pathways. But the fact is if you look at the numbers, we in academia, we mess up, right? Like if you look at the number of students who could potentially be interested in, say, computer science, like potentially just like, I think I'm curious, and then try to enroll, we totally do a disservice to the students because we don't accept any student that thinks that they want to be an engineer or computer science. And then we talk about, oh, we don't have enough diversity. Whereas we've closed the door already from the very beginning. And so I think a lot of times we talk about, well, we don't have enough students, but we're looking at it when we're like in the junior and senior year, we're cutting them off based on their interest level to say, well, you didn't take the right calculus. Well, you really didn't take computer science in high school, so you're not going to be competitive. And we do that at academic. And I think one of the things is that we have to start looking at ourselves and saying, you know what, we are actually a really strong part of this problem of not having enough engineers and computer scientists that are from a diverse population going out into the world and going out into society.
Excellent point.
So continuing this theme that I have on it's everyone's matter to address, I would say again that it shouldn't be the department chair or the dean, your esteemed dean here, to solve. It's really all the faculty. So one thing that we could do is the faculty of various departments that are represented in attending this panel could say, let's come up with a departmental plan on how we as the ECE Department of Northwestern will do broader outreach to our local communities or those communities perhaps that are most disadvantaged and underserved in the Chicago or Evanston, wherever area you wish to choose, and come up with an action plan that the faculty, perhaps with the students in their research groups, perhaps whether they're undergraduates or graduate or even postdocs, that each person can do and move the needle forward. So a plan of various things that we as the faculty can do of this entity. So that's what can be done at the department level. Each faculty member can say within my own research group, these are the kinds of things that I will do. So we will go out to high school students, at least one high school or junior high, and talk about engineering. In general terms, what does a career in engineering look like? Or what does research look like? Each person within their own sphere of influence, each department within their sphere of influence, each school of engineering within its sphere of influence can go about, addressing things to increase the pipeline. One, to fortify the pipeline. Two, to make sure that the throughput of the pipeline is equitable. That we're meeting the parity objective, that all demographic groups are succeeding at the same rates, and we are in fact putting in interventions for certain demographic groups, if as needed, to ensure that we have the output of the pipeline to be similar for all across the different demographic groups. So all this is to say that each person, each entity can and should, I think, take this on to come up with some milestones, some specific measures, some specific interventions to take, and take ownership of their role, of their status, of their their part in addressing this matter as advocates, as champions, as allies.
Let me give you an example of what's going on right here in the city of Baltimore. There's a project called a program called the Ingenuity Project. And in the Ingenuity Project, it's mainly juniors and sophomores, high school students, and they take primarily AP courses. This is, we're looking at very much the top end. And by the way, this does not mean that it's devoid of women and underrepresented minorities. The program is about 80% underrepresented minority, and half of those are women. The taking the courses and qualifying for those courses and taking those courses is one part of it, but that does not guarantee that the student will have a deep appreciation for STEM and for STEM careers. And so therefore we have internships or during the school year. And last year, the last full year, and this was before COVID-19, I think we had somewhere around 50 high school students on the campus here at Johns Hopkins working with major faculty on real research topics and real research projects. This not only qualified students, and by the way, many of these this work resulted in publications. I was very proud of the fact that 100 students graduating from that program in I think in 2020, the year before diversity, raised $10 million in scholarships and fellowships. No one went without a scholarship or a fellowship. Many of them were full fellowships throughout their undergraduate education. So it can be done, and I think we have a model that fits very well into it fits very well into those areas of concern that your previous statement contained.
What's the name of that program?
The Ingenuity Project.
Ingenuity Project. Okay.
Right. There's a good website on it, so you can find out detailed information there on that program.
Okay. No, that sounds like a great program. So, not to put you on the spot, I know, but I'm about to put you on the spot. You mentioned, right, there are some unique challenges that Black women have in STEM. Can you talk a little bit about what we should be doing to support Black women in STEM fields?
Yeah, so it's this intersectionality of being a female in engineering, which is already smaller numbers, and then self-identify as Black individual engineering, which always is small numbers. And so intersectionality, as you recall, both of them are less than one. You multiply that, you get really small. And so the kind of support, and this goes in terms of making this aspect of, diversity, inclusion, and belonging a competency versus just a value is that everyone should recognize that, when you have these very small numbers, that there are some unique challenges when you're in a room. There are some rooms, because of that intersectionality, that you just don't belong. Like it doesn't matter just because of that. And then there are other rooms where you have to put in, leave half of yourself outside of the room. And then when you go into another room, you leave the other half outside. And so you are never really empowered to be the whole person. What that does is that's a disservice, because it is the whole person that brings that diverse thinking to engineering problems. It's that diverse experience that allows you to say, hey, everyone is about to go over that cliff. I have an idea, like that cliff might kill you, right? And it's those kind of things. And I worry that if the community doesn't support this aspect of intersectionality, that what we're doing is we're cutting off, and we are basically squashing the voice to some solutions that should exist. And as you know, we've seen this now, with some of the stories coming out of NASA, some of the stories, that like this has been like, there's been a lot of seminal, influential Black females that no one heard about, for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's, again, because their voices were squashed and devalued in certain instances. And so I think we need to amplify this aspect of everyone needs to amplify. It just can't be just Black women amplifying Black women. It's everyone needs to amplify, especially the intersectionality, Black women or disability and being from an underrepresented minority, or, that intersectionality I think is undervalued immensely.
Right, thanks. Yeah, so that, I think, I could not agree more. We need to kind of, just think, if you just think about this, right, over, you go, all the way back to, the Hidden Figures era, and like your example at NASA, sort of all of the kind of the suppression, right? This is actually truly phenomenal that like it took this long for the broader populace to be aware of all this fundamental work that we could not be where we are today without the efforts of these women. And that, I mean, to me, that's truly remarkable that it took this long. And look at, all that we have potentially lost in the time, from, going back to then, where would we be now if we had not suppressed these voices, right? And if we had not kind of made a space for, if we had done sort of better job making space for people who don't fit the typical profile of an engineer. Okay, so I'm very pleased to welcome Maisa Moses. I would say that Maisa is the executive director of the Young People's Project, where she develops peer math literacy training programs and enables youth in organizational training and development. Welcome, Maisa.
Thank you. And I really apologize for coming late.
So, well, we're pleased to have you. We've been having a discussion about some of the ways that we can build the the number of students that come from marginalized background and kind of attract them to STEM careers. So I was wondering if you could kind of add some of your thoughts on what we should be doing kind of as a society, as a community, at the sort of university level, everything. What should we be doing to kind of to get more of these young people interested in STEM careers?
Mm-hmm. So I can talk a little bit about the work we do. We work earlier stage in the pipeline, K-12. And so if you think about, say, a sports metaphor where you have, or Little League, you have hundreds and thousands of kids who at a baby level are investing their time and their energy, and their parents and their communities are investing their time and their energy to help these young people involved in this sport. And so then you get a trickle up into professional sports. Well, in academia or in STEM, theoretically, once the students get to college and they're able to actually study the disciplines in college, then there shouldn't be a limit or barrier to their entry into the discipline. But the problem is that it's almost the reverse problem. It's a trickle of young people who are arriving in college who are actually ready. And so what we're looking at is how we can get young people themselves involved in working on this problem. And how do we tap into the energy of high school students, college students, through near peer math mentoring to work with the elementary and middle school students? Because as I think about the problem, the country has to ramp up its elementary, middle, and high school math education system. It's a huge problem. And it's not doing it fast enough. And that's just a problem that arises because of the global shift from an industrial to technological society. And then on top of that, when you layer in sort of decades and centuries of inequities and racism in this country, then it's in between those two problems where we're trying to work on the solution and how I understand the question that you asked me. And so from an organizing perspective, like, how do the people who are most directly affected by the problem, the students themselves, how do they start to get into the mix and start to work on it?
Okay, thanks. So I want to ask a question posed by the audience, if you guys mind. We had an audience member ask, say that they're curious to hear, if there was a particular thing that helped you to kind of stick with your STEM career and your kind of stay focused despite, odds and kind of injustices that you've had to overcome. Is there anything that really kind of motivated you then, and maybe that continues to motivate you now, that drives you forward?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. I think it would be helpful for the audience to understand and put their head around the fact that I think all the members of this panel, including the panel moderator, has, well, maybe not the panel moderator. When you were 18, maybe you started to, but the rest of us who grew up stateside in continental US has experienced racism. I mean, I'll just call it what it is, implicit and explicit biases since we were, all our lives. And from that, we've experienced, roadblocks, challenges, slurs, epithets, uncomfortable situations, and had to, walk carefully and deal with things in a measured way, and face challenge. We've learned how to face challenge and to operate in two different worlds. Dean Howard mentioned the various worlds with regards to a woman and then being African American, but we've dealt with it. So when it comes to STEM fields and engineering and computing and our backgrounds, what we've chosen to go into, we enjoy it. We love this. This is what we do. This is what we are, want to pursue. So the challenges that we face in this particular career path is really not much different than the challenges that we might face outside of the career path itself, just in life in general. And so I think that we were, at least I'll speak for myself, equipped to be able to deal with challenges that I might face within the field that make, that the biases that I might have encountered and have encountered, because I'm skilled at that in regular life. And so it may be hard for the audience to fully grasp that, but I don't see a whole lot of difference in dealing with the challenges there. It's something you like to do. You want to play basketball, or you want to play sports, or do something where you might be the only one. If you like it, you apply the skills that you have in other areas of your life to that as well.
I'll add to that. So one of the things, and this is building on what Dr. Pinkston has mentioned, is, us as panelists, we have a survivor bias. So basically that means that the skill set that allowed us to deal with the injustices of the world also allowed us to deal with the injustices within our fields and our career, right? And so what you're seeing is these are the things that, whether they were part of our upbringing, whether they're part of our DNA, we actually don't know, but we're here. But I think one of the things that also helped is that I'm sure each of us could talk about, someone in our background who was a sponsor or a mentor that was really there. Mine was like Professor Shield is who I called him. He's actually a panelist here, which going through my PhD program, the first Black professor that I saw in engineering was actually Dr. Pinkston, right? And so as a grad student, it was like, oh, look, there's something on the other side. Like this is a thing. This could be a possibility. And he was actually the NSBE advisor as well. So it was like, oh, and you could still like reach back, and so you could be a real human on the other side. And I think each of us can tell about a story about someone in our lives that really was that, that mentor or that sponsor that said, okay, I can go through this because I know that there's hope on the other side.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I went to work for Bell Laboratories many years ago was the fact that when I was there as an intern, I met people who looked like me that I wanted to be like when I grew up, like people like Link Hawkins, for example, Ray Story, and I can go on with the number of people. And in fact, I turned down almost twice the money that Bell Labs offered to pay me, primarily because I could identify someone who was succeeding in that place that I didn't see in the others that offered me far more money to work. So you have to balance things out here a little bit in order to, what's the most important thing? For you to be happy. And I knew that although I think I'm a trailblazer, it's very hard to be a trailblazer when you're a singleton. But when you see other people around you who look like you, now there's a possibility of coalescing into a working group that can really make changes. And in fact, that is exactly what happened at Bell Labs. We had an organization called ABLE, the Association of Black Laboratory Employees. Among other things, it established the Corporate Research Fellowship Program that graduated more than 500 women and underrepresented minorities with PhDs.
Hold on, 500?
Yes.
Wow.
This is over a period of 30 years.
Still, that's 500. That's 100. The
Yes.
sheer volume speaks for itself.
Let me say that the most important part of that program was mentoring. One of the things that each of the students that we took into the program had a mentor in the field that they intended to study. And when possible, even from the university that the student is attending. So we tried to make sure that not only the financial stumbling blocks, but if there were deficiencies in the background, and certainly in many cases, especially those students coming from less than first tier universities, there were holes in their background. We mended those holes and put the people on the ground able to compete with their peers. And this is what led to success. Our attrition was better than the best university in the country.
Russ, if I can just add just one thing to what was already said here. Back to the question that the audience member posed, I find what I found to be the most challenging thing is not the biases or stumbling the hurdles, whatever things that I had to overcome. It was more so, it was not imposter syndrome, which some may feel at times. I'm the only one, and do I belong here? For me, it was more so the Jackie Robinson syndrome, being, so I'm the first, and I don't want to mess it up for those who may come after me. Dean Howard mentioned that, she saw me there. I was the only one here at USC for many years, but at least she saw someone. But me being the first, I felt, if you will, a burden or a responsibility, let's call it, to be successful. And so I would hope that the Jackie Robinson syndrome will be a thing of the past. There won't be any more firsts. That we will accomplish that, and that we'll just have many, tens and hundreds of persons, and like you, when you grew up there in the Virgin Islands, and you saw people in positions of authority who looked like you, and and it was nothing special to see a Black doctor or lawyer or engineer. I would hope that we in this country, in this, the stateside, continental US, reach that point such that it's not a big deal to see someone who's a dean, a woman, African-American dean of the Ohio State University, and soon to be president someplace, somewhere. And I predict in some years to come. So hopefully, we'll get past that. But that was my main challenge to overcome. And I'm happy to have been successful, standing on the shoulders of others and my mentors and others who inspired me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if we could bring that part of, my life growing up in St. Thomas, you can look around and see people that look like you in places of authority, kind of that would be great. And if we could also bring a little bit of the tropical weather, that would be good too. I would appreciate some of that here in Chicago. Okay, no, that's great. So I have one more question from the audience. This is for you, Ayanna. So we have an audience member who'd like to hear a little bit more about unspoken biases that exist in engineering and how they impact how they have the opportunity to have a negative impact.
So I would say that there's a biases on the faculty and the student side. On the student side, it's everything from the fact that when a student is talking to a faculty member and they say like, "You're in my class?" Like, "I'm in your freaking office. Of course I'm in your class," right? Like something that's very subtle, but when you continue hearing that as a student who's also, you might be like, okay, engineering is really hard. So that's an example of a bias. And we know that traditionally, these kinds of things and these kinds of words have power are, gender, underrepresented minorities, marginalized communities, over and over and over again, all the way to the actual technology that, I sometimes I still get frustrated when I go into the bathroom and I try to wash my hands. And I'm just like, we still have these systems that are out there that are designed not with the diverse voices, diverse experience. And so technology does not even work for everyone equally. And this is everything from some of the medical devices. It's from, the watch that's supposed to measure things like heart rate to, these are like the 2020, 2021 technologies. And it's because, as engineers, we tend to not necessarily think about the fact that technology is not value neutral. Unfortunately, we choose parameters, we choose spectrums. Cameras still don't see everyone the same. If you notice, if you take a camera and you even recently, look at all the faces, and every so often, sometimes they still miss the faces when you have that bounding box. And so this is just examples of all the things. Whereas if you have diverse people in the room that's testing and designing, it'll be someone that says, you know what? I just tested this and it doesn't work, right? But if it works for everyone because everyone is not representative of the world, then no one's gonna realize it. And then it goes out and you go into the bathroom and can't wash your hands and have to stand on your head and put up your foot to get the faucet to turn on.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The finger press for measuring the oxygen in the blood turns out to be very inaccurate for Black people. And that's something I learned from my brother recently. So I'm sure there are many more similar situations that we just don't know enough yet to be able to identify them.
Right, and this, in particular, right, with something like this that had a medical application, like this has, this is not just, my video game system doesn't recognize my face, which infuriates me, but this is, something far more severe. So it has real life consequences.
Yes.
When people mess this up. So that's so I just want to, we're kind of running short on time, but I just want to kind of give everyone the opportunity to just say, as we wrap up, just sort of one thing that you think is a positive sign that kind of that you're hopeful, or something that you're hopeful for in the kind of just kind of very quickly as we wrap up.
I think that one of the very important points that I've been able to witness is that white people are becoming far more conscious of race. This goes back to the initial premise of Floyd's dilemma, I'm sure we've all witnessed this. When I talked about getting stopped by the police, oh, you must have been speeding. No, I wasn't speeding. Total disbelief that I'm being treated different than they are. I think that those differences have shrunk since Floyd, and this is indeed a good thing.
So I'm hopeful because just one thing is about the conversation. Like there is a conversation going on with, I would say, a large number of people who typically wouldn't have had the conversation. And with the conversation comes the listening and the, I don't understand, but I want to understand, right? And that's what makes me hopeful.
For me, I believe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that the the arc of the moral universe may be long, but it bends towards justice. We might not see that in my lifetime. I mean, again, this is quoting from King. He didn't think that he would reach, we would reach the promised land in his lifetime. I don't know that we will in my lifetime. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and we're still grappling with these things. We have as a country for 400 years, but little by little, we can make progress. We have some starts and fits at times, where we take some steps back as a country. But I think overall, the goodwill of people, of humanity, which we saw a year ago, that was an affront to all of our value system. We said, this can't be the case. Can it? And I think that it was a startling jolt to us. But, and then of course, things since, but when we see, police, chiefs say this wasn't right, and you see, the other unions saying we need to actually take some steps. I mean, that's just one segment of society. But when we see this university and then others, universities and professional societies saying we need to take this on, I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful, and I would hope that each person in their own spheres of influence, whether it's around their dinner table at home, or in their offices or group meetings or classrooms, each person can take this on to move the needle in some way. I'm hopeful that people will do that.
All right. Any thoughts, Mesa, on hope that you have for the future?
I guess it's my hope that keeps me working every day. I agree that last year was a watershed moment for the country and for the planet, and it has sparked windows of opportunity. And so I think we've been focused on trying to spot those windows of opportunity and focus on those windows of opportunity to move the conversation and to move the action further around this issue. This whole question of diversity in STEM has been a really powerful organizing tool for us in our work in education. And so it's just a really, it sits at the nexus of some of the most important problems of this time.
Russ, if I can jump in, Maisa, we brought up the issue of starting early, and I think organizations like yours are really key for doing this. And we have the academic perspective, but how can we help organizations like yours? We in universities, what's the best way we can help organizations like yours succeed?
So our YPP's bread and butter is partnerships. So in order to do our work, we have to partner with local schools, universities, community organizations. And I would imagine that that's true of most nonprofits that are doing this work, or grassroots organizations that are doing this work. And actually, maybe 5 years ago, maybe more, the National Science Foundation launched NSF Includes. It's a new program. And what they said was that this problem of diversity in STEM, one, it's a matter of national importance and even national security. And that it's not enough to scale great programs or organizations, that it requires alliances and community building and ecosystem building and collective impact. And so I think your question is really, really key. It's central to the current thinking about what's needed to address the problem. It really is going to take alliances and partnerships and figuring out, the best way to work. And part of it, I mean, what I have found, like I said, we're always happy to partner, and it's taking the time to listen and to figure out what the synergies are, right? And to me, there's always synergies. Like there's always opportunities for synergy. It's just a matter of being open to finding them and understanding that we're all on the same team and working for the same thing. So I don't know if that helps. That was a really general answer. But I think that it's a really, really important question.
Thank you for that. And now I'd like to thank everyone for your questions. I'd like to thank our panelists for this great discussion, and thank you for everyone that posted, for attended. I want to thank Dino Tino for creating this opportunity for us to talk, and I would like to thank our team, that Amy and the McCormick Communications folks, for helping us to put this together and make sure that everything ran smoothly. These guys are pros at the highest level. I'd like to thank the ECE Diversity Committee for supporting this event. And I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us today. We hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you again. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And thank you, Russell. Thank you, Russ.
Thanks.
All right, take care, everyone.